All right, here we are. Welcome into the Bite Me podcast. And this is a little bit of a different look if you're watching us on YouTube Live. I am in beautiful New Orleans and over here at Super Bowl Radio Row. But there is a tie-in with the Bite Me podcast, as there always is. And we're going to get to there. Captain Caleb McCumber, he bleeped them up this morning.
Oh, you sissy ass. You said you were going to say it.
I was going to say what you said, which, by the way, we can. This is a podcast, and we've said worse than that, I think, in some cases. But yeah, Caleb is here. He bleeped them up. What the hell? I'm on Bourbon Street. He fucked them up tonight.
Hey.
He broke the ice. Now we can all cuss today.
Captain Scott Null is here as well. And Captain Dean Thomas is here. We were a little bit wondering if you were going to be here. You have a bunch of stuff going on. We're going to get into that real soon. But this is the Bite Me podcast. And I guess it's not for, it's, rated PG-13 at best at this point. But either way, yeah, I'm in New Orleans at Radio Row now. It's really cool. This is like my either 21st or 22nd Super Bowl that I've been able to come to. And it's always fun. And look, we're going to go deep on Louisiana fishing since I'm here. And I was working this rundown yesterday afternoon, or I think the day before yesterday. And I'm like, we've talked about Louisiana. We've talked about Caleb doing tournaments there. We've talked about, some trips that Dean and Scott have done in Louisiana, and Scott's tenure there that he used to go and fish a lot. But we've never really done a deep dive on Louisiana. So since I'm here, we're gonna dig in on Louisiana. But one thing about being here is the Radio Row is always fun. You see celebrities everywhere. You get stories from a lot of guys know that I do the fishing podcast, which is kind of cool because there's people from all over the country. There's people from all over the country here, and they're like, "Oh, hey man, how's that fishing podcast going?" And so that's neat. The breadth and the reach of the Bite Me podcast is pretty dang cool, and we knew that already, but it's nice to see it in living color. But don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Again, Podbean, if you want to subscribe and see every episode we've ever done, it's right there, but you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, on iTunes, on Spotify, or anywhere else. And we get these questions oftentimes on the Bite Me group page on Facebook. You can search Bite Me Fishing or Bite Me, and you'll find it. 10,700 members, which one of the guys I was talking to yesterday about the podcast said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, man, it's a whole community." But let's start right here, because as I am in Louisiana with 10 other people in one house, it's a nice house. That's where I'm broadcasting right now from my suite. But 10 guys in the common area, and some of the things that got me thinking about fishing trips at fishing cabins, fishing trips on tournaments, which I'm gonna prod Dean and Scott into telling some of those stories. But it's a different world, man, when it's a bunch of dudes on a road trip, whether it's fishing or hunting, or in my case, on this trip. I'm going to start with Caleb, because Caleb was a little reticent about bringing up maybe a story or two about what it's like. He was a little reticent, to say the least, traveling with other dudes and no one there to pick things up. I'll give you one story real quick, Caleb, before you give me your I guess opinion on things that happen when you're traveling with other dudes on fishing trips and hunting trips and such. One of the big issues that's happening right now here at this house is, you guys know I love to cook, and I cooked. I brought a brisket and a couple of chickens and some beans that I made homemade, some potato salad I homemade, and it was really, really good. They seemed to appreciate it a lot. And then afterward, I'm just anal about this stuff. After everybody was done and then they had the meat sweats going, I just started cleaning up, and I cleaned the pans and all that stuff, and no big deal. That's what I do. Well, the next day, Clint Sterner, who's from beautiful Baytown, if you want to call it beautiful, and he made some eggs and bacon and stuff for everybody, and left all the pans, all the plates, all the spatulas, all the spoons for 2 days. Seth Payne, who played for the Texans, if you don't know, and is on our station as well, was scraping that crap all morning long, soaking it in hot water. And I'm like, that's a story that I got to get, or those types of stories from my guys on the Bite Me podcast. So Caleb, you were up for some of the challenges, some of the things you've had to experience.
First off,
he didn't want to do this.
If you want opinions on things, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? Because I'd like to know at least one person gives a shit on this planet.
Look, the Philadelphia Eagles are better in every way. Better offensive line, better defensive line, better.
It doesn't matter who's better. It doesn't matter.
I'm getting there. Better receivers, better linebackers, better everywhere except one place, and that's quarterback. And so two things.
I thought you were going to say referee.
Well, that's what I say. So two things are in play here. Is Patrick Mahomes going to be magical again in the waning moments? And the second thing is, no matter what Roger Goodell says, and I was at his press conference just this morning, listening to him spew a line of BS a mile long about, oh, that's social media driven. They got the referees.
Look, and Mahomes is not magical. There's nothing magical about getting the benefit of the calls. He didn't do that shit. The ball hit the freaking ground. The whole world saw the ball hit the ground. Mm-hmm. And here's another. Look, before we get too distracted.
No, that's what we're here for, man. That's what I love you.
19 camera angles on every single play. The ball hit the ground.
Yes,
it plainly hit the ground. Those are momentum changing calls that completely gave the game. It took it from the Bills and gave it to the Chiefs. It's bullshit. Well, who would watch that garbage?
Well,
all of us are gonna watch it.
No, I'm not. I'm done with it. I'm done. Done.
Number one, the Bills got screwed out of 2 first downs on 2 plays. Everybody's talking about the 4th down play the quarterback got across on. What about the 3rd down play that they cleared it by a foot? Number 2, there ain't nothing magical about Mahomes when he throws an incomplete pass and they just drop a flag on the ground and say 15-yard penalty first down.
Yep,
that is not a completion.
There you go. Mm-hmm. He's not magical. That long pass the Bills. The long pass the Bills threw the last play of the game when it hits homeboy in the chest, and the commentator said there's a flag out, and then dude drops it, and we don't ever talk about that flag again.
No, that's a big thing that made the rounds. Yeah, it just disappeared.
Anyway, so back to the topic. I'm pretty sure I'm the one that's a pain in the ass to travel with. I'll say that out loud.
That's fine. Explain.
I'm pretty sure I start every fight.
I can see that.
I'm pretty sure I make every mess. I'm pretty sure I forget to plug in everything that's supposed to be plugged in. And I'm pretty sure I forget to unplug everything that's supposed to be unplugged. The only damn thing I'm good for is casting at a fish and making it eat. I mean, we can be honest. I did have a guy once he decided to smoke the devil's lettuce, and he got so baked that he thought he had a heart attack, and we had to take him to the hospital. That was inconvenient. Turns out he didn't. However, if I would have made you breakfast, I would have 100% left the dishes out for 2 days, because if I cooked, you're cleaning them.
Well, no, there is that. That is kind of an unspoken thing. But 2 days. 2 days.
Did it take you 2 days to do the dishes, John?
No, it took me like 20 minutes.
And what do you think? His mama's gonna come and wash up behind him, or what?
Exactly.
John and those mama didn't show up and cook the breakfast.
That's right. What are some other things when you're traveling with dudes on a fishing trip or a hunting trip?
Man, I traveled across the country with a lot of fuckers.
Oh God, I broke the seal. Oh, that's why I didn't want to do it. That's why I didn't want to do it.
Some of them were great, and some of them were not. And so, just for instance, you can go when I go fishing. I like to get where I'm going. I like to get where I'm. It's not about the journey; it's the destination. Yeah. And the difference between traveling with Scott across the country. Well, first of all, with Scott, you better carry a pee bottle with you in the truck, because he don't even stop to pee. I mean, you better hope
one
there's
extreme to the other.
A dirt road. Yeah. Or you can take 2 days getting to Florida and and eat at every Cracker Barrel along the way, you know, and you buy some souvenirs at the gift shop in Mobile, Alabama, and shit like that.
A neck pillow.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that sounds oddly specific. That sounds oddly specific.
yeah. But no, I mean, and it's luck of the draw, man. It's just kind of the guys that you end up with. Some of them are cool to travel with. Some of them, it's a struggle.
I bet I snore the loudest too.
I see. I'm always conscious of that because I know I snore.
And Caleb, you left out, so you're probably the last one to the boat, ready to go as well.
Yeah, yeah. If we're leaving at 7, I stumble out the door at 6:59 and 59 seconds.
That's if
The
he
one-
shows up.
So here's one. Actually, I'll name some names on this one, and then we'll let Scott go on because Scott's probably got something to say about me on my travels. But we used to do these long distance paddling trips where we went from Corpus Christi to Baffin Bay, and then Baffin to Port Mansfield, and then from South Padre. And I used to travel with these two guys, Aaron Reed and Kendall Larson. And me and Kendall, we were always, man, ready, packed, sitting there. Aaron Reed, we were sitting there on the bank, and this dude was asleep in his bed so hardcore. We're banging on the door, beating on the windows. We could look in there and see his feet sticking out of the covers. And no matter how hard we beat on that door, he would not get up. And I mean, our boats are sitting in the water, packed for 3 days of traveling in the water. And yeah, that dude was never ready. Hell, he showed up for the trip without a piece of gear. He went to Walmart and bought every damn thing he needed when he got to Raymondville. So
that's a bit much. That's a bit
yeah.
much. Scott, you've been doing a lot of the same things, and a lot with Dean. If we're being honest here,
Dean's easy to travel with. You give him a little tequila, let him cut up his limes. It's easy. He goes to bed early. He don't snore, so it's all good with Dean. He and I traveled real well together. We had a good time. He almost stabbed himself in the leg one time because he was cutting up limes. We went to a liquor store somewhere in Florida. I don't even remember where we were. And he gets this bottle of tequila, and he's sitting in the passenger seat cutting up limes with his sharp ass knife. You always see him sharpening knives on here. He carries a sharp knife. He's cutting up his lime to go with it, and an officer pulls up next to us. Dean drops his knife and there stabbed himself in the thigh.
Scott was always totally nonchalant about drinking and driving, and I've always lived on the outside of the law. Scott always lived on the inside of the law.
I never would have guessed.
He was in the Brotherhood. I didn't realize that when you travel with the Brotherhood, you kind of get a free pass.
Well, if you get pulled over and you've got a can cracked open in the cup holder, that's probably slightly different than slicing up limes to go in your tequila.
Yeah, that's pretty in depth right there.
Yeah,
he's got a little salt, the little wet sponge thing. While he's driving. Here, let me just.
When we were driving across country, Scott had that Dodge Ram, one of them old school Dodges that rattled. It'd shake the windows when you crank it up, and it had like a 600-gallon fuel tank. It did not need gas from Houston to freaking Orlando. And so that's why you had to have a pickup. He just refused to stop. And as long as Scott has some Red Man chewing tobacco and a Dr. Pepper in that truck, we ain't stopping. And I used to just wish, I was like, I would hope that Dr. Pepper would run out. I was like, some chewing tobacco would run out. But he'd have a whole damn sleeve, 10 packs of Red Man and freaking 24-pack of Dr. Peppers and 600 gallons of diesel, and we were not stopping. I guarantee you, we broke records from Houston to Tampa because we was inside the law.
you had your free pass working.
Well, his previous trip, he had stopped at every one of those Cracker Barrels on the way. And so first time we were talking about this trip, we didn't even know each other that well. I've been down there and fished a couple of times, stopped by the shack. And he calls me up. He says, "Hey, man, you going to Orlando for this tournament?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Can I ride with you?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I got one question. Do you stop at every Cracker Barrel?"
That was
Did
it.
you see? I said, "No." He says, "How you travel?" I said, "I get there as fast as possible." He goes, "I'm in your passenger seat. We're all good."
That was a complete understatement from actually from what I was understanding.
Yeah, you could have gotten a little happy median there. Not
Yeah,
one
he could have.
extreme or the
He didn't say, "Bring a pee bottle." We ain't.
other.
Dean fell asleep one time on me. He fell asleep in Louisiana, and we woke up in Florida. I was pulling off
And
the
then
road.
just to show you how long ago that was, the only place that we stopped would be at a truck stop because we would get the Larry the Cable Guy. It was probably cassettes then. What was it still cassettes? CDs? Okay. Well, we had graduated to CDs at that point. Yeah, so we would get Jeff Foxworthy, Larry the Cable Guy. Oh, wait a minute, who's Rodney Carrington?
Yeah.
We would listen to comedy, the redneck comedy, for like 15 hours. It's hilarious.
So that's legit how you guys met.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Other than
we basically
of each
met
other.
on a 12-hour road trip.
Well, that's one way to.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other part of it. You find out a lot about people, man.
Scott was standing by his kayak. I was standing by mine. We made eye contact. And then there was this little warm, fuzzy feeling.
Little music. Little music, romantic music was playing. All that stuff. So here's the other thing. Tournament fishing, Caleb, you've been very reticent here about any particular things with tournament fishing. What's been the biggest challenge there when you travel with partners?
Oh, you just spend so much time together, and you have to make a lot of stressful decisions, and it gets to the point where maybe each of you are a little bit tired of the other one's crap, and it's those are long days every day for weeks at a time, and it dang sure it wear you out. Where Daniel always got really aggravated with me is he would, like, the evening before the next day, he'd want like a full breakdown of what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it, and I'm very it's late in the day. All I want to do is drink beer and think about anything but fishing. But B, I don't have any kind of decision made until I get to the ramp tomorrow morning.
Right.
And that would those two different the personalities just clash whenever there's one like him and one like me. But at the end of the day, I think whenever like me and my wife are extremely opposite on a lot of things, but I think that makes the team better. Because what I don't have, he has. What he doesn't have, I have. And so I think some of the best teams out there, face those challenges pretty sneaking regularly.
Well, there's something to be said for that. No question.
I can't remember a time Dean and I even got cross with each other on all them trips. That was a lot of trips.
No, we fortunately, you didn't piss me off.
I don't think Scott was retired at the time, Tyler.
I did go to some. No, he was still a cop. That was he retired in the middle of all of that. But I have been on tournaments and trips like that where at the end of the day, dudes want to sit around and break out their tackle box and tie knots and look at lures and shit. And I'm like, what? I mean, it's like, to take a break, man. I mean, that I got that
breaks in tournaments.
No. I mean, you tie your knots before you leave the house. If you're concerned with all of that,
the tournament days aren't. I can't think of those ever being a problem. I get really uptight and anal on tournament days, and Daniel is there more for a good time than I was, and so I would get pretty. I think he told me one time, "You're taking all the fun out of it," and I was like, "I ain't here for fun. Ain't nothing fun about it. I'm not here for fun." Yeah. But most of the strife is during pre-fishing, where it's just you've been Groundhog Day in it for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and And like Dean says, on those days, and that's where, you know, the differences in personalities really come out. But your ability to get past that and still go compete together and win money, you know, that pretty well trumps all of it.
Well, Perry has a terrific follow-up question here, and I want all of y'all to answer it. I'll start with Caleb because he addressed it to you, but have you ever seen any other partner fights, partner drama, something like that?
Me and Chuck McKinney offered to whoop a dude's ass once, but they weren't our partners.
Well, okay. How come?
Yeah. Well, first off, this jackwagon. So I was on the board of directors for this tournament series, and this jackwagon was on the chopping block of getting kicked out of it, because we've talked about it way back in the past. Bite me's. You get the privilege to enter a tournament. If you're a piece of crap and we don't want you there, you just don't get to play. This, you know, the democracy does not work in these things. And I was actually the tie-breaking boat to let them keep fishing. And then furthermore, on day one of said tournament, the weekend of the incident, or we'll get there. On day one, these guys got pulled over by the game wardens, and the slant boards we use are going to measure a fish shorter than a game warden's flat board, particularly whenever you're out on the bay rocking around and everything.
Yeah.
And so they got pulled over. They had a fish that went over on the game warden's board. The game warden did not write them a ticket, but made them release the fish. Well, that evening at the weigh-in, everybody was raising hell that they should be disqualified because they broke the law. And I was like, every damn one of us that brought in a 27 and, 3/4 or more redfish, in theory, broke the law.
Yeah.
And furthermore, it's hard to measure those fish on a flat board rocking in the bay. The game warden obviously didn't see a need to give him a ticket. He just said, hey, you can't have this one, and threw it back. So everybody's raising hell to DQ him. Again, I came to their defense, said, nope, we're not DQing them. The next day, and this ties in with one of our other topics, but I got even better story for that one.
Oh, we're going to get to that one because we didn't get
the next day. Me and Daniel show back up to weigh in, and I think we're sitting in like second place. Second place pays, I don't know, like 20 grand or something. And the tournament director comes up to me and he shows me a video on his phone. He says, "Is this you?" And I looked at the video, and I can't remember if it was me or Daniel, but one of us was on the front platform and the boat was on plane. We were resetting adrift. And this jackassery son of a gun had been out there fishing, the one that I'd saved from being kicked off the tour twice, and videoed me or Daniel, I can't remember which one of it was, on the tower resetting adrift. Because we were just making long drifts out in the bay across the flood. And had turned us in for breaking the rules, and we need to be disqualified.
What was the rule?
There are tournaments that say that you cannot be on any elevated surface other than your helm while the big motor is on. That being said, I know the rules pretty good. Remember the board of directors part?
Yeah.
So the tournament director's like, man, I'm sorry, bud. You're my buddy and everything, but I'm going to have to DQ you. I said, Ron, your ass hurts. There is nothing in those rules that say I can't do that. He said, yeah, man, there is. I'm real sorry. I said, sit down and read the rules, Ron. And so he went through the rule book front to back 3 or 4 times, and he looks at me. And this takes like an hour and a half. And this whole time, I'm like, I'm going to get DQ'd out of a tournament. Everybody's going to be talking about Captain Caleb, the content creator, is a cheater. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm going to be out 20 grand, all this stuff. And finally, he looks at me like, it's not in the rules. No shit, Ron. And so they've got my blood pressure up this whole time that I've broken the rules and everything. And as soon as he says it's not in the rules and it had me all screwed up for a couple hours, he says, all right, well, I guess you're going to get paid. You just got to go take your poly. I'm like, dude, you got what?
You got the video.
And then no. I mean, there's polys for all kinds
for
of
everything, yeah.
Too. But the fact of the matter is, you have me all charged up, put it in my head that I cheated, and now you're going to go hook me up to a machine that reads my brain?
And your emotions?
Oh, man, I went there and told the poly director, I was like, look, here's the thing, man. Go take me a second to explain this. But But yeah, I don't even remember what the starting question was. but
Well,
yeah.
I'll follow it up. I'll follow it up because when I asked about if you've ever seen any other strife.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we make it through that.
I damn got his blood boiling right now. Just thinking about
This
it.
is good. Dean
So
got
we
going
make it
early.
through that, and then 2 weeks later, we're at a different stop, same tournament, same people. And Chuck McKinney, God love him, he can stir a pot. And Ron goes through all the rules, and he says, if anybody has any issues or questions, call me. And at that point, Chuck from the back of the crowd goes, is it 1-800-BITCH hotline? And these two dudes fluff up, and here they come, man. And we've got this one dude that fishes with us, and he's an outlaw redneck. Like, he's ready to go. And when I saw him stand up in public, stand up and put his shoes back on, I was like, this is about to happen. And we were standing in the middle of the blacktop in Sweetwater, Louisiana, bumping chests with two dudes that they had me by 120 pounds each.
It was over in a flash.
Yeah.
There it was. So anyway, Perry, thanks for your question.
Yeah. All right. So Scott and Dean, they both, as soon as I asked that question, you ever seen any other strife? They both put these grins on their faces like, I got to know now. I got to know which one of you want to go first. Scott, you go first.
Dean knows the story well. We had a tournament over in Florida, and there was some honesty guy cheating going on in that one. I mean, these guys, everybody knew it. And one of them he was sponsored by a bunch of the people who sponsored the tournament. And he was a local redfish guru and all this. And so the tournament director wasn't going to kick him out, wasn't going to DQ him.
Yeah.
And it got pretty heated inside the weigh-in because everybody in there knew that they had flat out cheated. I mean, they not only cheated,
they launched on private property.
Oh, wow.
That everybody else didn't have access to.
Yeah, in the kayak tournaments, you had to launch from a public place. And they had launched through some guy's yard and parked there and then paddled out 100 yards and started catching their fish. Well, a bunch of other guys had paddled forever to get over there. These guys were already there when they got there.
Yeah.
And then one of them witnessed the homeowner going, whose truck is this? I'm going to have it towed. And the local legend, who's a guide over there, paddles over and says, yeah, that's my truck. He offered him a free fishing trip, free guided fishing trip if he wouldn't tow his truck.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was very public. Everybody knew it was a pain in the ass, but they wouldn't disqualify. And of course, they were in first place.
Of course.
And here's how crazy that one went. So we're in the little hotel ballroom where they're giving the awards away. So the dude gets on stage to accept his award, and then all these dudes in the crowd start yelling, "Cheater, cheater!"
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. And so tournament director took absolutely no control over this crowd. It just escalated. And so the cheater dude was also drunker than shit. So the tournament director dude was stupid enough to let cheater drunk guy get the microphone.
And not to mention he's like 5 foot nothing.
Oh yeah. But I mean, it turned into a fight in the hallway that went out to the parking lot.
Like
I'm
an
pretty
actual
sure
fight?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Lord. Yeah, they were I don't remember if did the cops show up for that? Were the police there? Yeah, I think the police. But so me and Scott are up on the balcony looking down on the whole melee, just watching them. Man, they were going round and round, and man, there'd be like an argument over here, would break into another one to the other side of the parking lot. It was total chaos. And that was the end of that tournament. That was the last.
Oh wow!
They never recovered from that one.
The whole kicker was I was in second place.
And
everybody stood up when they announced me as second place. The whole crowd who had been hollering cheater stood up and applauded and went nuts and said, "You're the real winner."
Yeah.
And just side note, like the fact that they did that's big time cheating. Like they got there early.
Well, he was
didn't have to paddle. That's big time.
Yeah, and he caved into the local sponsors. Didn't want to hurt their feelings. And in The end, the joke was on him because that was the end of his tournament. He never had another one of those. But one of the best fights where it was pretty violent, man, was in Corpus Christi at the Laguna Shores venue down there. It was one of the Redfish series. It's quite a few years ago. I think it was called the Redfish series, one of the original ones. And so these dudes were arguing about they were infringing on their fishing spot. They got too close to them. And of course, this was like at the end of the tournament day. Everybody was pretty well drinking, and it was out in the parking lot. If you know the Laguna Shores area over there, it's got the little venue, and then it's got where all the boats and trailers and stuff parked to the side. These two dudes, after they had been jawing at each other, they got out there in the parking lot and they just got a little too close to each other. And these were some big boys. I mean, they fought good. It was a good fight. And so these two started fighting the other two. And so it was kind of 4 of them. And then the next thing you know, 2 more jumped in and kind of sucker punched this other dude. And so then 2 more jump in.
Oh, Lord.
And then this mass of like fighting dudes are just going through the gravel, on the ground, stand up, back on the ground. And then they wanted to break it up. I was like, no, let them go, man. Let them go. No, they covered like 50 yards of just, it was a good one, man. Them boys were tore up when that was over.
See, this is the stuff that people come in for. These are the stories that people want.
Yeah. That's what you pay your money to see at the tournaments, man.
Everybody should have hung out a little bit after the Bite Me fundraiser, but Camille says we can't talk about that.
Oh, yeah, we can't talk about that. We've got to draw the line somewhere.
We took away someone's benefits of gravity and then reestablished them very quickly.
Yes, you did. There was
a lot of gravel in that parking lot too.
There was. It's all about your personal space, isn't it? That's what it's about. All right. So I don't want to bury something that I teased, and then we definitely got to get to the topic that we skipped last week, and we're definitely going to get to Louisiana. But Caleb, you made me say the F word, so you better explain about what you guys did today.
Oh man, we had a good day. I went out fishing with Captain Charlie Paradosky, and I'm not going to take any of the credit. All he did was put me in areas to cast and say you better catch them. But we fished Matagorda today, and I saw a big fish called up all up and down the coast. This warm up coming off of this cold trend has been pretty solid. Charlie said that he'd been in afternoon bites, and then yesterday the afternoon bite sucked, so he suspected it shifted the morning bite. And I think we had 5 or 6 over 5 pounds, and then one close to 7 this morning. I had one that was, what does it say, 33. Mine was 34, 10 plus. It had to be 11 plus. But no, we caught some really good fish, and I wanted to give Charlie P a shout out because he does have some openings coming up, and he's a lot of fun to be on the boat with. Today's the first day I've ever fished with him. I've known him for a long time. I've done stuff like live streams and stuff. I had a really good time with Charlie P. So if anybody wants to go chase some big ones and learn some stuff in Matagorda, give Charlie P a call. Tell him Captain Caleb sent you. Yeah,
man. And legend as well. And then the other thing, Dean, you've got some stuff coming up as well, which obviously you've been texting with us, and you've been fighting this back thing for a while. So if people are wondering why you won't be on the podcast next week and won't be
or the week after,
and the fishing show and those other
fishing show
2 weeks, explain yourself, my man.
Yes, I'm going to be traveling to Austin, Texas, to the University of Texas Medical Center with Dr. Johnny Stokes, and he's going to be taking 2 discs out of my bag, putting 2 artificial discs in, putting some rods and pins, and going to do a little Frankenstein on me. I told him to leave them poking out a little bit, like the bolts.
Poking like out the bolts in your forehead?
Oh, yeah, man. No, I've had, it's just a product of destroying my body for 50 years. But like when I said when I'm done with this thing, there ain't gonna be nothing left. I'm gonna get my money's worth out of it. But I've been living with back pain that's just been misery for many years, and I'm finally gonna do something about it. So,
and yours is extreme, Caleb. I know you want to say something here too, but just like anybody who's fished for as long as all of us have, and a lot of people listening, your back's going to hurt. I mean, but it's not going to be like what Dean's is next level.
I got a picture of my MRI. I should show you guys. The 2 discs in the bottom, they're completely gone. The vertebrae in between those discs has moved forward at quite a dramatic distance. I mean, it's like, and so the nerves are squished, and there's a lot of shit going on there. Stenosis, which I don't even know what that means, but it sounds really serious.
Sounds like you did know what it means.
I just read the report, you know.
I got that stenosis working.
Does anybody feel like you can see Dean's weighing in the X-ray, and that's why he wants to show it to us?
Yeah.
They should have took a picture of it after my last surgery when it was all swole up. That'd have been way more impressive.
Oh man. Hey, I said Charlie's got good stories. I learned something today. I'm gonna take a shot at all the trout people out there. Charlie grew up fishing with Rudy Griegar. That was kind of his teacher man, whatever you call that. He told me today that mentor, yes. He told me today that Rudy was actually a fanatic red fisherman that caught a bunch of trout in the process. And so everybody that thinks that all these great books are about trout fishing, the best one's about red fishing, and y'all can suck it.
How about that? That's true. That's absolutely true. Go ahead, Scott.
No, I got to meet Rudy a couple of times, and yeah, he was much more about redfish than he was trout. I mean, he liked catch trout, and he caught a lot of trout, but he loved redfish.
All right. So before we get into the discussion on Louisiana, and I really want to spend a good chunk of time on that. So we actually translated this from a topic that we had on my regular radio show, which is why I'm here. And it was called Admissions of Guilt. And I told some stories, and there's got to be some fishing related stories to it as well. Kayla's been chomping at the bit to tell this story for a long time, like something that you've been accused of. It sounded like your first story was part of this actually, but something that you've been accused of that you just didn't do. And here's the thing, some people might still believe it.
I wouldn't exactly say I was chomping at the bit to tell it. All I'm saying is I read the rundown and was actually prepared for a show and was quite excited about that.
Well, that not as excited as I was.
Now, after the freeze in 2020, I got real active on social media about conservation and all this stuff. And that's about the time that Parks and Wildlife, who had given me and Scott their number and said Texas anytime, blocked us. And it really irritated some of the old timers around Matagorda that, I'm running their business. People aren't going to want to come fish anymore, so forth and so on. And this is information passed on to me from around the cleaning table. But one of them said, he said, that kid don't have any right to have an opinion. All he did was hire guides, learn their spots, and just take his people there. And I thought, that's odd. I've never hired a guide, but that's odd. Okay. But then the other one said, yeah, he doesn't even fish. We never see him out there. And at that point, I was fishing about 25 to 27 days a month. So am I in your spots fishing them? Or do you never see me? Which one is it? Yeah. I'm going to go with the never see me because I never see you either.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I thought the irony of that discussion was pretty. Typically, when you're getting pot licked, you see the person doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to hear Dean and Scott. And Scott may or may not have to do with fishing because obviously your previous life, I'm sure you were accused of a lot of things that you didn't do.
Oh, good one for that.
But go ahead, Scott.
Yeah. I had a young rookie with me, and he's pretty green. And we got called to an apartment up there off of Greens Point area. And I was still young. I'd been on maybe 2 years. And we get up there, and it's some guy who is all doped out. I mean, I don't know what he was on. At the time, there was that angel dust was big.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he was on that. And he'd gone into some gal's apartment They had come back from a club, picked him up at a club, and he went back to her apartment. He got naked and started to crap all over the place, naked and spewing and throwing up all over her apartment. And she calls the police, of course. And then we get there and it's like, the hell we do with this guy? I mean, he was covered. I mean, he not only done it, but rolled in it. And he's covered. And he
just real quick before you finish the story, you don't want that guy as a roommate on a fishing trip. Anyway, go ahead.
You might have that guy in your
yeah, we might in the group here. Yeah,
there's a couple of candidates.
Yeah,
but yeah, he had passed out by that point, and we got the paramedics out there. They check him, and he's still alive. Everything's good. You know, he's just passed out. So. You've seen all the covers that you put over a dead body at a scene.
Yeah,
kind of thin, papery. Well, it's waterproof too, and so we rolled him up in that like a fucking burrito, and we got him rolled up, and about 4 or 5 of us carry him down there to the car, and we load him into the back seat of the car, and we drive him down to the station. Well, he wakes up partway through and he's throwing a fit and he's going crazy. And we got him down to the jail and we took him down there to get cleaned up before they put him in jail and put some jail clothes on him. Well, we had an area that it was off to the side of the jail, and it's where they kept all what we call the P farm. It's where guys work off their, they got Class C's and they can't pay the fines, so they work it off. They're trustees. So we drop him off with the trustees at the garage, and they're going to clean him up. They're going to shower him off, clean him up, and take care of it. That was the end of it for us. We dropped his ass off and we leave. Well,
so was he still rolled up like a poo-poo burrito?
Yeah, we got him out of there, and he was nasty. Oh, you cannot imagine how nasty.
I bet y'all took him out of the car real nice and easy. Don't bump his head.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Watch your head. Watch your head.
I was a senior officer. I didn't touch him.
Yeah. My mind is racing. My mind is racing at what did Scott get accused of? What did Scott get accused of?
Yeah.
The next morning, I'm sound asleep, and back then we had pagers, and I slept with a phone next to the bed because guys would call you for extra jobs, go work, some security job. They'd call you up. So I was always up for that, needed extra money. They call me up. My pager goes off, and I look at it, and it's the station number, and it's 911. And I was like, oh, crap, that's not good. It's never good to get called to the station and have a 911 behind it.
Yeah.
For the younger in the crowd, the pager tells you the number.
This is true. A lot of people may not know that.
I had a pager, fool.
And then at the end of it, they'll put 911 if it's really important. And so I called back, and the sergeant says, hey, Internal Affairs is here, and they need to speak with you. You need to come on down. I'm like, uh-oh. The guy died. That's what I'm thinking. The dude crapped out and died, and they're going to have an investigation. So I'm like, all right, well, when did he die in the jail, or did he die? And he goes, no, he's still alive, but he's complaining. So what the hell's he got to complain about? So I get down there, and he has accused us of putting him across the hood of the car.
Oh God!
Handcuffing him to the buddy bumpers by the wrist. Those little push bumpers. Putting a handcuff on each hand and handcuffing him to the buddy bumpers, laid out on the car, and running him through a car wash.
You did it.
You did it.
I'm like, damn, I wish I'd have thought of that.
Yeah, that would have been a good way to clean him up.
That would have been a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
But somewhere out there is an officer who did that to this poor man. And that guy was so jacked up, he just thought it was us.
Yeah. No, I was thinking the same thing.
But somebody did that to him and ran him through a car wash, handcuffed to the bumper of a police car. It was not me.
Kind of brilliant. It's actually pretty brilliant.
We had a car wash right next door at the garage. It was police car wash. It had the big brushes and all that.
I want to see the surveillance footage.
I want to see it so bad. I want to see this. He's scrubbing his nasty ass.
Oh, how was work, honey? I had a real shit show last night.
It really was.
Well,
Dean,
the other one was
go
a
ahead
game
and finish.
warden.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
the other one was a game warden,
Mhm.
and I had a crazy ass buddy of mine. His son listens now. He's passed on, but he was a bit of a redneck outlaw out there, right? Old Mr. Keene.
Mhm.
And I was always having to be kind of careful when I was with him because I was trying to get in the police department. I didn't want any of his shit to flick off on me.
Yeah.
Well, we're down there at Hall's Bayou Ranch. There's about 3,000 acres in there. You paid like $5 or $10 a day to go into this ranch to go duck hunt. We were back there duck hunting way back in the marsh. Robbie had this old jacked up Ford 4-wheel drive truck, big tires, all jacked up. And we were way back in there, and we're one of the last ones coming out, 10:30, 11 o'clock, we're sliding out of there, and we're driving down the road. And as you get to 2003, there's a gravel road that runs in right there, and that's the only exit out of the ranch. And as we're pulling up there, looking up, and there's some cars up there. What the hell? There's a whole bunch of cars around the gate. And as we pull up, the gate is locked closed with one of them big bars across it.
Yeah.
And there's about, I don't know, 6 or 8 game warden trucks sitting there, and they all have ARs pointed at us.
Jeez.
As we're pulling up, and we stop, and they're on the loudspeaker, show us your hands, show us your hands. And we're showing our hands. And
good. This is a good story.
This is not good. This ain't good at all. I'm looking over at Robbie, and the first thing out of my mouth was, what the hell did you do this time?
Yeah.
It's got to be. I hadn't done anything. It's got to be him. They get us out. We're on the ground. Eating dirt, the whole bit. Got us down, patting us down, searching us, pulling us apart, and questioning us separate, and all this other stuff. And this one other game warden, an older guy, comes up there and he's looking. He's walking around the truck. He's looking at it. And he goes, "Shit, this ain't them."
No kidding.
I was like, oh crap! Thank God it wasn't. Thank God it wasn't Robbie. I'd just be caught up in it. Turns out there had been a guy out there in the marsh a few days before that who had been in the same kind of truck sitting out in the middle of the damn marsh. But Robbie had a big old rebel flag in the back window of his truck. This other truck apparently didn't have that, and that's what the game warden walked around the back and saw that, and was like, "Nah, this ain't them." Well, the guy had parked out there in the marsh and was using a rifle to shoot geese.
Oh man!
In the middle of the marsh, sitting in the back end of his truck in a lawn chair, drinking beer, shooting geese as they flew over with a rifle. Those of you not familiar with duck hunting, that's highly illegal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And when they went out there to go get him, he took shots at them.
Oh.
And then jumped in his truck, in his big ass 4-wheel drive truck, and proceeded across the marsh for several miles and across a whole bunch of rice fields and through the fence and out onto 2004. And that's where they lost him. They couldn't follow him in their trucks. And so for whatever reason, they saw our truck out there and they thought, this dumbass is back.
They're shooting geese again.
It was not. But yeah, I've been taken down pretty harshly.
In my mind, as he's crossing the rice paddies, I hear the redneck laugh out the window. That hee.
Got him, got away.
Well, this was in the times of Dukes and Hazards, man. That's all I could hear was the Dukes and Hazards song as he's cutting across some rice paddies.
Well, there ain't no way my story is going to compare to those two. Dean, yours might.
Shit, mine don't either.
Something you've been accused of that you just didn't do.
Man, the only thing that comes to mind with me is, I was accused of having anger issues from my ex-wife, but I still totally disagree.
The problem with Dean having stories about this is everything he's been accused of, all the shit Dean's been accused of, he's going, I did it.
Yeah, I probably did that.
Yeah, you got me. Except for that anger issues thing. I still totally disagree with that.
Yeah. You're so angry about that.
Really pisses me off.
That really pisses me off. They said I got anger issues. I'm not even going to tell my story because it's just a little blip on the radar compared to those. But
hey, you peed on a crackhead.
I did pee on a crackhead, but I didn't know she was there. and I actually did do it. It's not
Yeah,
something I'm
you did
accused
get
of that I
accused.
didn't do.
Good.
Well, I'll tell the story real quick because you guys can probably figure out who it is, but I'll keep it quick because I want to get into Louisiana. So I was on some trout. This is when I was fishing in Sabine, and I was waiting, and then I got in the boat, and I think we tried somewhere else. I came back, waited some more, caught some more trout, so I decided to just stay there. And this was on the south shoreline of Sabine, and this guide that I knew, an actual guide in Sabine that's been there for years and years and years, came up and literally pulled in within, classic story, within 50 yards of where we were waiting, and started not only waiting, like I could have let it go if he started waiting in the other direction. But he started waiting like behind us and then next to us. And I kind of was looking at him, giving him the look, like trying to give him a hint. He got within probably, I mean, we could have easily had a conversation. He was so close. So I finally said, screw it. And that was a day. That was a good day. We were catching some really nice trout, and I got in the boat. Screw it, let's go. I was with one of my sons and a buddy of his. Got back to the ramp, and at the ramp, this is when I was keeping those. I kept some of those fish, and I was cleaning them. And this guy, and there were a lot of people there because there were big trout, kind of looking and talking and drinking beer at the cleaning table. The guy pulls up, points at me, and says, "There's the guy that came up to me, came up and ruined my wade." Literally what he did. Like literally, because on the first wade, I forgot to say this. On the first wade, I could see his boat out there drifting or whatever. We went out for somewhere else for about another 30, 45 minutes, came back, did it again. He's still out there and saw me come back and decided, okay, they're catching fish, or whatever. He had binoculars. And at the ramp in front of all these people, fortunately I didn't know him, but he pointed at me with my son there and his buddy. There's the guy that came in and took my weight or whatever he said, just so he could make himself look good because he had some fish too by now, And I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I had somebody do that to me, and then they took a picture of my boat and posted it on Facebook.
Do I remember that? That was relatively recently, wasn't it?
Maybe so.
A couple of years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I was like, man, like the ego on some of these, all you had to do was say nothing. Like, hey, you caught some nice fish. I caught some nice fish. And I never would have said that guy came up within 20 feet of me on a wade, like literally within 20 feet.
These fishing guides are just, they're unreasonable.
They're the worst.
All right. So let's get into Louisiana. That's where I am. I feel like we've sort of here and there talked about Louisiana, but never, like, for some of our listeners. Franklin is from Louisiana and texts a lot, on here on the live stream and all that stuff. Somebody called me a pot licker. They believe it too, but I didn't do it. He did it.
Hell, I believe it.
I figured you would.
It's common knowledge now.
That's right. But we've never, there's a lot of people here, and that's how I ended up in Sabine, ironically enough. I mean, I just hear stories that they're catching fish there. Ended up fishing some in Calcasieu, learning the bays. We've talked about learning bays and all that. But Louisiana is just a different breed, man. A lot of our listeners, Caleb, I'm gonna start with you. You've probably been there the most recently, and Scott and Dean, but Scott has got a lot of stories from big redfish he's caught there. But if you want to go into Louisiana, give us some sort of a template, sort of an outline of things that are different there, things that you need to look for and approach and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we got to the topic with 6 minutes left in the show.
We're good. We're good.
I mean, pointers of Louisiana, don't stop until you pass at least Lafitte. It sounds dumb, but if you don't know, say from Port Arthur to Houma, you're going to run 1,000,000 miles and run into all kinds of stuff. And when you finally get somewhere and say, this is nice, I'm going to fish here, the law is going to come run you out of it. Mm-hmm. But they chill out once you pass Lafitte. When you from Lafitte all the way down to Hopedale, they're a bit cooler about it. Man, I think the entry level to Louisiana fishing would be go to the coastal parts of it. go to the Venices, go to the Buras. Never mind. Buras got a lot of oil field equipment. Go to the Grand Isles, those kind of places where you've got bigger bodies of water that are near the Gulf, and kind of get an idea of what the bottoms are like, what the the overall depth, how these things are connected by big channels that turn into little channels that turn into smaller ones. I think if you just go dump in at the stuff that's further inland, the Homas, those kind of areas, that you're going to find yourself in little tight areas with a bunch of metal in the water. But you can put in somewhere like Homa and run down the channels. So, I mean, that would be my broadest answer, is get coastal about it. Go to the places that have the big waters with some little ponds around them. I wouldn't go straight to the spaghetti bowl marsh stuff just to have your first time ever in Louisiana, because the truth of it is you're going to be scared the whole time when you really don't need to be. Everything looks really shallow and like a train wreck, and it's not. And then about the time you go, you know what, it's okay to run around through here, then you're going to rip the skag off your motor.
Yeah.
So that's the safest part of Louisiana is the actual coastal part of it.
And what's different? And Scott, I'm gonna come to you next, but like, what's the biggest difference? Like, you're fishing here outside of the watercolor in some areas, but the way you approach it, it just seems like there obviously, you mentioned channels and smaller channels and all that. What are some of the way you would approach it in terms of what's different from let's say Texas and Florida?
You really don't share the water with as many people. You can kind of go out and do your own thing. Trout fishing wise, here I drift across the middle of a bay trying to catch trout out of the boat. In Louisiana, it's more of fishing points and channels and where water's coming around pieces of land or coming out of the marsh into big bodies of water. I don't see them. And this doesn't really, let's get this clear right now. Calcasieu is not Louisiana.
Yeah, I know, but that's where I was.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is people, they drift the south end of Calcasieu and catch trout all the time. That's not Louisiana. That is
not the same approach.
That's way eastern Texas.
Yeah.
The fish down there, if you find somewhere at good grass and bait, there's probably fish in it. It's a more, over here we have the 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. In Louisiana, it's a bit different. The thing that really blows my mind about Louisiana is the redfish and the trout. They act almost backwards, and I don't know why. In Louisiana, when the trout are really schooling in Texas, they don't school over there very much. When the wind's blowing here, I'm talking like 25, 30, the birds really don't work here. Over there, it just seems to fire them up. Birds work the crap out of trout in the dead of the summer in 30-mile-an-hour winds in the middle of the big lakes. The rules over there are quite different than the rules over here, and just the way the fish respond to nature. Over here, a thunderstorm will just absolutely shut down the red fishing. Over there, it makes them slick, and that's the only time I've seen them school up really good is after a big thunderstorm runs them over. It's a different spot. You need to go spend time over there to learn it. But even from your first day over there, you have a pretty good time because it's so different, and then the ecosystem is in my opinion much healthier. The dolphins in the marsh, that's really weird to me. I was somewhere down in Falgoux last week, and I had dolphin that were in like a little channel, and they were hauling ass and jumping up and mudsliding across the flat and catching a fish and then doing the worm back off of it. I've been in 2 feet of water and had a 4-foot shark come blowing past me. It's a wild place. It's really cool. But it's hard to sit here and say, this is what you go do over there.
But now, that's a good sort of like picture of it. I appreciate that, because that's good stuff.
Well, but it isn't as abundant as it was, what, Scott, let's say 5 or 6, 7 years ago, whenever there was a cluster of redfish on every stinking point. Like the fishery got whacked pretty hard over there, but in my opinion, it's still a better fishery for what I like to do than Texas is.
Go ahead, Scott, because I know you have some insight to add from what Caleb said there. Especially you were kind of bull red, hunting, so to speak.
Yeah, most of mine over there. I mean, I've done a lot in some other marshes and like out on the boot. I've been out there several times. Captain Troy with the chandelier charters, we got blown out on the chandeliers, so he'd just pull up in there. pull up an old oil field cut and park his big ass 63-foot boat in there. And then we jump out and go prowl around the marsh. Those trips, it was all about, like Caleb said, it kind of throws you off because you're used to fishing, drifting in open water to catch your trout and do all that. Trout over there, they acted more like redfish to me. And there was a whole lot of fishing small cuts, anything that had a little bit of water movement, deep, a little deeper cuts.
Yeah.
And then the redfish were just scattered everywhere. Absolutely. I'm talking, this was 20 years ago. You couldn't throw a topwater in there without getting blown up. And it was all about pattern fishing back then. If the reds were on points that day, you weren't catching anywhere else. They were just on points. If they were in the coves, that's all they were on. It was a fun way to fish because you had to really piece it together. Whereas our redfish, they're kind of spread out over the flats, and you're just kind of wandering around, and they're doing their thing, and you're out there covering water and catching them. Over there, it was more specific, from my experience. It was, they were eating topwaters or they were eating soft plastics. It wasn't, I could throw a topwater and you could throw a soft plastic, and both of us were catching fish.
Yeah.
It would get a lot more specific. I don't know why that was. Never really figured out the whys, just worked around it, and played with it. On the guiding that I did over there was all about those big bull reds that get up in the marsh in the winter. Well, they're in there a lot throughout the year. The winter times when I went, because the water was clear and we could sight cast them. And we're fishing, their marshes are deeper. When we start talking about our flats and marshes, we're talking about a foot or less, and we're all running these skinny boats. Over there, I was poling in 2 and 3 feet of water and sight casting to bull reds. And the bulls were really scattered out. They really didn't school up much. It was singles. Every now and then you'd see 2 or 3 together. And but that was a January, February thing for me.
Yeah.
They weren't chasing bait fish. It wasn't like you could watch bait and see that happening. They were just all grubbing bottom. And honestly, we didn't keep any, so I couldn't really tell you. Well, I take it back. We kept one time that was deep hooked, and we kept that one, and it was full of eels. I mean, just absolutely chock full of these little, like 3 or 4 inch long little eels that were kind of a greenish color.
Kind of like that DOA that I finally caught a redfish on.
kind of an olive colored, and just little eels of some kind, little mud eels, and throwing flies at them. It was all about getting it down there to them. They wouldn't come up to the top. You couldn't throw poppers at them. If they were down there, and that made sense that they were eating the eels, picking them off the bottom. But as far as somebody going over there and just trying that, I had a bunch of guys from Texas that would show up, and they all knew who I was. This is the fly fishing community over there, showing up over there, same ramp I was using, and some damn good fishermen. And they'd come in, they're like, "Man, I thought this was just going to be easy, easy pickings. And man, we didn't do anything today. We saw a few, but we didn't catch any. And how'd you do?" And the whole thing, my customers standing there, and they're like, "Oh, we wiped them." And, making people feel bad. But it took a lot of time to figure out how the currents work over there, because the marsh is so extensive, and there's so many channels, and there's so many little oddball channels, and this little channel has a ton of current and this little channel doesn't. And they're right next to each other, and you just kind of shake your head. It's like, I don't know why, but I know it does. So that's what I'm going to fish. And so it just takes a whole lot of time to learn all of it. And but once you do and you get it dialed in, I was to a point where I knew every day when I was going out where I was headed and what I was going to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, and Dean, I'm sure your experience has been mostly out of a kayak, and it's a perfect transition. By the way, we're not going to really do what would Scott do, what would Dean do, and Caleb. I'll let Scott just handle that solo, because I really wanted to dig in on this and give some people some of the insight that if they have that hunch to go, that inkling to go to Louisiana. And we might have to circle back because we're just really giving about 10, 12 minutes here. But Dean, what I wanted to ask you as a perfect follow-up to what Caleb and Dean Scott said is, like, I'm guessing most of yours was, in a kayak. So
Yeah.
you really got a real feel for kind of what they were both talking about, with the differences are stark in terms of not just tides, but bait, not seeing bait, and some of the things that you have to key in on if you are planning to go to Louisiana.
And yeah, I mean, there's really not a lot I can add to be, any different than what they said. They nailed it pretty much. Just different ecosystem, different everything that that they deal with over there. So it's always, to me, I always find it interesting that you don't have to travel long distances to find a really different program. I mean, we compare the flats of South Texas to as close as Galveston, to that base system compared to what we have here, and the time that the shrimp hatch and the times that things are schooling and when they're not can be very different. So yeah, I mean, it's a vast, expansive place. What's interesting for Louisiana right now is their future and where they go. I mean, there were a lot of fish killed, and how, hopefully, because it is such a vast, expansive place, it may rebound quicker. That's another interesting thing I was thinking about the other day. They had such a massive fish kill, will they rebound faster because they have that vast, expansive marsh?
Yeah.
Which probably, a lot of areas that were tucked in where fish survived better than others that were exposed. I don't know. It's an interesting concept. If that type of system recovers quicker than the flats of South Texas.
With danger of sounding like other internet fishing celebrities and this is what's going on. The takeaway I could forecast in Louisiana, and it's only because I was over there, and it may be completely wrong, but I've seen a lot of videos of the fish kill and the fish washed up on the banks and everything. And whenever that bay has the biomass of the fish in it, I personally think if it was a big kill, that would be 20 yards deep worth of dead fish on those banks. Whenever I was over there, I did troll through some pretty vast areas that was shallow, and it was going to be hard for those fish to leave. In fact, I looked over at Chuck and said, these fish are dead. Like we might as well gut hook them and cook them tonight, because they are done. They're not going to stand a chance tomorrow. That being said, there wasn't nearly the number of fish in the marsh that there typically is. This time of year, they do tend to slide out into the coastal waters. Scott was talking about all the different guts and stuff. They're all connected to the ocean over there, and that's what makes it so difficult. And then I fished a ton of early spring tournaments over there. I start there in March just about every year, and the marshes there, yes, there's fish in them, but they aren't just stacked like they are in the summer. And then as those spring tournaments go on and on and on, you start seeing more and more coming in. And part of my keys to success whenever I was over there is I figured that out pretty quickly, that in the wintertime, they go out to that 6 or 8 foot of water that's, over there. And I would start fishing the inlets from that deep water into the marsh.
Yeah.
And so I would like to think, because the videos I've seen, and I haven't seen all of them, I get it, but the videos I've seen, there's like a fish like every 5 to 10 yards dead and floated up on the bank. If those marshes had their biomass in it, I still think they would be everywhere. Yeah. I think if there's one every 5 to 10 yards, it could have killed everything in the lake. And it's just showing that there wasn't that much to kill. So I am really hoping, for Louisiana's sake, that a lot of those fish were, like, for Franklin's instance in Delacroix, the marsh is right there, but then there's straight shots out to American Bay, which is 6 foot deep. And I'm hoping that the biomass of their fish is out there where we typically see them this time of year. So fingers crossed. They have a lot more to come back in. East Matagorda Bay didn't have
Yeah.
We didn't have an ocean right there to come back in. And furthermore, the ocean we have is in a six foot deep estuary for 40 miles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really hoping for the best for Louisiana because their fishing's taking a hit. It doesn't need any significant ones. And I'm hoping this one was just like, oh, that sucks, and not, oh, man, this is catastrophic.
Man, this is great insight. This is one of my favorite episodes this year because great stories, more stories than we usually do, and people love that. Great insight on Louisiana. And as Harrison said, we need some more Louisiana talk. I want to make a trip up there too. We will. Maybe this will be our first 2-part topic in Bite Me podcast history. Wanted to dig in on that. Again, we may circle back, but we do want to at least give a cursory, brief, what would Scott do just in terms of, in general, Scott, coming up this week? What would you do?
Man, as Caleb was talking there, I was thumbing through. I don't think I've ever seen this, but the lowest temperature for the whole entire week through Sunday is 65 degrees. The highest temperature is 67 degrees.
So you kind of know how to dress.
That's pretty stable. I mean, and it don't matter whether it's midnight or noon. It's all the same. And the lowest wind's 9 and the highest is like 14.
Mm-hmm.
So it's dealer's choice, man.
Yeah.
Since you're over in Louisiana. What do you like to go do? I would look at springtime kind of patterns a little more because it's been warm like this. I mean, every day here, and it's just been muggy, warm, and like fog in the mornings, just heavy. Everything's wet. You go wade up shallow, you go poling, go find your redfish. They're all up shallow right now. Caleb saw it today.
And they're dumb. They'll eat everything. They're stupid.
I like those fish. Some fish I hate. Those fish I really like.
So what
like
you got right now, you've got an advantage because you had a little bit of a freeze kill. It killed mostly bait fish around here. So bait fish got knocked back. Bait fish are scarce a little bit this time of year anyway. You don't have the shrimp. So the fish are hungry. They're out looking. And now we've got this little warming trend. They can get up shallow and start prowling around. I would think it'd be an excellent week to take off and go fish all week.
How about that? I wish I could, but I'm still up here. And Dean, we put a video up of you. I was playing with that new video software that I downloaded, and I put together a little video of a little fishing report you did. Not trying to compete with Angler U, which of course we want everybody to be a member there if you're listening to the Bite Me podcast. But that turned out, if you want to see just a little medium tide thing that Dean did.
I mean, I don't want to disrespect your video editing skills.
Hey, it was my first try.
You're not competing with Angler U.
No, I know. That's the whole idea.
No,
just make it quick hits. Quick hits.
Hey, hold on. Let me stop in the middle. Let's circle to some Angler U stuff because Dean sent me about 15 videos of him fishing off his kayak with his video.
Some killer shit.
Great stuff. And it's over on my screen right now because I'm editing on it. But there's a portion that I'm going to pull out where Dean's sitting there and he's like, yeah, man, I'm sitting here on my kayak. I forgot how great it is. Right out in front of me is a deep spot. And man, there's redfish boiling in there. They're hitting me in the legs. Let's cast in there and see what happens. And he goes, well, that cast sucked. All right, let's try this again. I stopped what I was doing. I watched it about 5 times.
Oh,
this is hilarious.
No, wait. We're not in the same category with videos, but I wanted to say we're going to give it a taste.
I send a little video to John, a little commentary. Boom. 10 hours later, it's posted. I sent that to Caleb 3 weeks ago.
And it would have been
because we have so much content.
It would have been like an hour, but I got this Super Bowl thing. I did it after I got home. But anyway, other thing, Dean, before we get out of here, God bless, good luck. We're hopefully that back's going to be back in time.
I'm going to be wade fishing again. I haven't been able to walk like long distances, and that's what I asked the doctor. I said, "Is my prognosis going to get me back to wade fishing?" And he says, "That's our goal."
All right.
So we're on the same page.
Yeah. Well, you guys are the best. Don't forget Angler U. Go ahead, Scott.
And while I was talking about that weather, I just want to throw in there, this is false spring. Don't get used to it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to freeze again. We're supposed to have a cold front the following week, sometime during the fishing show. And by the way, we didn't even mention the fishing show, but
yeah, we'll get to that because it is next week.
Week.
We'll do Tuesday, and then we're live on Wednesday.
But yeah, don't get too comfortable with this temperature. Take advantage of it while you got a shot, because fall spring's
Temperature
happening.
and no wind.
Yeah.
Temperature and no wind. And nobody brought up Dean's badass drift soccer that John got inducted into the Aggie Hall of Fame. You and Manziel, dog.
Yeah. How about that? I'm a Hall of Famer. All right, guys. We'll dig in again next Tuesday. Then Wednesday we're going to be kicking off the fishing shows. We'll tell you a little bit more about that. Great.
And when I'm gone next week, I need y'all to talk about the drift sock.
We will. The shootout.
You want to talk about your new drift sock next week, Dean?
Oh, hopefully he's on drugs.
I want you to talk about it.
Maybe we can talk about the fact that there's a video on your profile explaining why your new drift sock is good already. But we'll cover that next week.
Cool. Man, dude, that would be crazy, man. I'm gonna be laid up in the bed next Tuesday.
Painkillers, we're gonna call you
on the what's that stuff called? The oxycodone.
Yeah.
This is where Dean's documentary begins.
Yeah. If you never thought that Dean could actually talk slower sometimes, you'll find out next week. All right, boys.
We're gonna get a picture of him standing butt ass naked in his room, just holding his drift sock over himself, giggling.
And there's a hole in the middle. Remember, there's a hole in the middle. You guys have a great week. Have a great weekend. Great show. A little long, but these long ones tend to be the best ones because the stories and the info were great. So you guys have a great week. Have a great weekend. I guess we should say go Eagles because everybody hates the Chiefs, and we'll talk to you next time.
Man, I'm pretty proud of myself, John. I didn't say fuck one time this whole show because I'm a professional.
I did.